I am a big proponent of the golden rule. I mean, of course, right? Of course. You know, to treat others as you want to be treated, or do unto others as you would have them do unto you. These are not unique, these are not words unique to Jesus. Indeed, they are found in Matthew and Luke, but in the writings of Homer or Seneca, Philo, and all the major religions have evolved their own versions of what's called the golden rule. Sometimes this comes in a positive version, you know, always treat others as you would like to be treated yourself, and equally important is the negative version. Don't do unto others what you would not like them to do to you. And people have found when they have implemented the golden rule, as Confucius said, you know, all day and every day, not just the question of doing your good deed for the day and then returning to your greed and egotism, but to do it all day and every week and every day. When you do it, you dethrone yourself from the center of your world and put another there, and then you transcend yourself. However, you know, we now live in a very bizarre world here in our country where the golden rule has been turned on its head. You know, name calling. I mean, watch the news. Name calling, angry outbursts, and insensitive, demeaning language that every day is there. They have become the norm. And everyone seems vested in their own narrow self-interest than in helping others. We are forgetting what it really means to be a fair, compassionate human being. I mean, often people don't want, the reality is people don't want to be compassionate. They want to be right instead. Yeah. And the thing is, people have been increasingly unwilling to put themselves in the shoes of somebody else. Because that's the thing. I think that's what's fundamentally changed, our country in these recent years, is that many people do not want to understand that you need to put yourself in somebody's shoes first in order to assess their situation. And because when we don't do that, we lose the essence of who we are, especially as Christians, We lose the essence of who we are. I've heard many stories about the Great Depression, and everything I hear about the Great Depression is that they said, oh, we pulled together. We pulled together. And we made it. And what we are seeing now is that people are pulling apart rather than coming together. Look how polarized we are. Even that touches our United Methodist Church. Where is civility? I mean, civility is a dirty word now. Oh, yeah. It's sort of kind of obsolete also. Now, civility rightly understood does not mean appeasement or avoiding important differences. It does not mean that we cannot disagree or that we cannot speak our minds. It means listening and talking about those differences with respect. In a healthy democracy, we need to do that. And I call that respectful engagement. But civil discourse needs rules. It needs boundaries. For instance, there is difference between language that is simply rude and demeaning and speech that invokes hatred and intolerance. There is difference. Specifically, of groups, I'm thinking about, racial and ethnic groups. I'm thinking of the LGBTQ community. I'm thinking of the disabled. I call this, hate speech. And hate speech can lead to violence. Yesterday was a general conference all day, and as is a whole day, we spent time in prayer, hearing from Eurasia, parts of Asia, Philippines, Africa, and the States. We were there together to hear God's voice in order to discern a way forward for the church. While that was happening, on the corner of the dome in St. Louis, there were like 10 people with big signs, big signs, nasty signs, with the Bible in hand and with a megaphone, spewing their hate with the Bible in one hand, using offensive and demeaning language. I don't think they were United Methodists. They show up everywhere, even for funerals, especially for the LGBT community. Not even allowing families, to bury their dead in peace. Verbal abuse, Bible in one hand and hate speech in their mouth. We have lost some kind of civility. We can talk, but we have to make an effort to understand each other. And I think that when I've talked to people who have disagreed with me and really, really listened, I might continue not to agree with their views, but I have a deeper respect for where they come from when I have truly listened to who they are. Excuse me. This has got entangled here, and I don't want to make any noise. Otherwise, the guys are going to chastise me. Okay, that's better. Anyway, back to the golden rule. The golden rule in itself implies that each individual has worth and value. And in my case, when I have been at my worst and I have not applied the golden rule, it is because I have not seen myself with value and worth. It is because, when I have mistreated people, it's because my low esteem has been very low. There is a correlation there. The thing is, if you don't love yourself, it is going to be very hard to treat others with love, because you will treat them as yourself. If you hate yourself, you're going to hate others, But if you have a balanced love for yourself, you will have that for others too. Because the person on the other side, about the golden rule, is just as worthy of justice as you are. Because when you imagine yourself in the shoes of that another person, he or she must have the same level of humanity, dignity, a sense of fairness as you would want. And in this way, the golden rule transcends divisions of class or status or gender orientation or race. The golden rule has to be taken at face value. It cannot be twisted or manipulated to mean anything other than what it is. Seeking some wisdom from the contemporary of Jesus, Rabbi Hillel, older contemporary of Jesus, who, when asked by a pagan to sum up the whole Jewish teaching while he stood on one leg, said, "That which is hateful to you, do not do to your neighbor." That is Torah, and everything else is only commentary. The early fathers of the church said that any interpretation of Scripture that bred hatred and disdain was illegitimate. So when you see yourself reading the Bible and everything is pushing you towards disdain and hatred, that's not a good reading of the Bible. No. And I think we need to revive that spirit, And it's not going to happen because, a spirit of love wafts us down. We have to make this happen. People often think, compassion simply means feeling sorry for somebody. But of course, you don't understand compassion if you are just going to think about it. You also have to do it. And this reminds me of a joke that Mark Twain, he wrote something talking about compassionless. Mark Twain wrote, "I did not attend his funeral, but I wrote a nice letter saying I approved it." Golden rule, it's also about trust. And we have to ask ourselves, is trust broken? And there are three things, components of trust. And this is at work, at the office, outside, everywhere in the family. Three components. First is to be yourself. What is that? It's not to be legit. What's the word? Forgot. I have it here. But it's to be yourself. If you are not yourself, people are gonna smell it. Far away, they're gonna smell it, and they're not gonna trust you. That's one thing. So if your being yourself wobbles, people are not going to trust you. The other thing is, have a sound logic, the logic of your ideas. If you're rigid in your logic of how to communicate things, people are going to trust you. But if that wobbles, it's not going to happen. That happens at work. People who are in church, who are leaders, if they don't trust their people, if they don't let them be who they are, they're not going to trust. If their logic is not well articulated, they're not going to trust. And the other important thing is empathy. If people think that you don't have empathy for them, they are not going to trust you. Right? So if any of these wobble, you're in trouble. And that has happened. We have lost our trust. We lack empathy for one another. I was reading, there was this professor in business school, Harvard Business School, and she took off to go to Uber, because Uber 3 years ago was in disarray. And she found out that there was no trust. And Uber was almost going to the garbage. And what happened is that, she wanted to help them, regain trust, especially trust. So there were three components, to let people be themselves, which in any company, big companies like that, it's hard to be yourself, because if they want you to say what you want to, hear, or uniform you in a way that, everyone is the same, instead of allowing this transparency of people, to be themselves. But then she discovered that when they were in meetings, everyone was on their phones, on their cellulars. She said, no more communication. I mean, if you are in your cellular when you are talking about the meeting, and you're talking about the meeting, there's no trust there. You're breaking those rules. And then empathy. Discovered that people didn't have empathy for each other. So she worked on them and finally kind of recovered them to where they are now. But she said, one of the things that's not going to happen is that to let Uber people be themselves, because we want to, make things, uniform things. I mean, what's the word? I can't. My mind. Yeah, conform to things. So it is the same way in our society. I mean, who do you trust? Do you trust the grocer? Do you trust your mailman? Yeah. With what, you might ask, right? Yeah. But I mean, you ask that question, and that's why we are in this situation today. The golden rule, a universal rule, is not working. Not because it doesn't work, but because we're not applying it the way we should. Let me tell you a story. And probably you will learn more from this story. A long time ago, in China, a girl named Lily got married and went to live with her husband. And of course, in a Chinese family, you live with your husband and your mother-in-law. And in a very short time, Lily found that she couldn't get along with her mother-in-law at all. Days passed, weeks, months, and she could not get along with her because they were always arguing and fighting. And what made the situation even worse was that, according to the ancient Chinese tradition, Lily had to bow to her mother-in-law and obey her every wish. And all the anger and unhappiness in the house was causing the poor husband a lot of distress. So finally, Lily could not stand her mother-in-law's bad temper and dictatorship any longer, and she decided to do something about it. Lily went to see her father, who had a good friend, Mr. Huang, who sold herbs. So she told Mr. Huang her situation about her mother-in-law and asked if he would give her some poison so that she could solve the problem once and for all. And Mr. Huang thought for a while and finally said, "Well, Lily, I will help you solve your problem, but you must listen to me and obey what I tell you." "Lily," said Mr. Huang. "Yes, Mr. Huang, I will do whatever you tell me to do." "Okay, Lily." Mr. Huang went into the back room, picked up some herbs, and returned a few minutes with a package and said, "Lily, you can use a quick action poison to get rid of your mother-in-law because that would cause people to become very suspicious. Therefore, I have given you a number of herbs that you will slowly build up in her body. Every other day, prepare some pork and chicken or egg rolls and a little of these herbs. Put these herbs in their serving. In her serving. Now," he said, "in order to make sure that nobody suspect you when she dies, you must be very careful to act very friendly towards her. Obey her every wish and treat her like a queen." Lily thanked Mr. Huang and hurried home to start her plot of murdering her mother-in-law. Of course, weeks passed by, months, and Lily served the specially treated food to her mother-in-law. And she remembered what Mr. Huang had said about avoiding suspicion, so Lily, controlled her temper, obeyed her mother-in-law, and treated her like her own mother. And after 6 months have passed, the whole household changed. Lily had practiced controlling her temper so much that she found that she almost never got upset or mad. She hadn't had an argument in 6 months with her mother-in-law, who now seemed much, more kinder and easier to get along with. And the mother-in-law's attitude towards Lily changed, and she began to love Lily like her own daughter. And she kept telling her friends and relatives that Lily was the best daughter-in-law she could ever find. It's like my father-in-law is like, he says, "Hey, David, you are the best son-in-law I've ever had." I'm the only one anyway. Yeah. So Lily and her grandmother were now treating each other like real mother and daughter. And Lily's husband was very happy to see what was happening. But one day Lily came to see Mr. Huang and asked for his help again. And she said, "Mr. Huang, please help me to keep the poison from killing my mother-in-law, because she is changed into such a nice woman, and I love her like my mother. I do not want her to die because of the poison I gave her." Mr. Huang said, "Oh, it's too late." No, he didn't say that. Mr. Huang smiled and nodded his head, and he said, "Lily, there is nothing to worry about. I never gave you any poison. The herbs I gave you were vitamins to improve her health." Here's the thing, he said, "The only poison was in your mind and your attitude toward her. But that has been washed away by the love which you gave to her." Wow. The golden rule is an injunction to live by grace rather by what you think other people deserve. What would happen if the golden rule were always applied every day? And the thing is, you have every opportunity, especially today and tomorrow and this week, to live it out. Because the world would be very, very different if we applied it often. Amen. Mary, you have something for us, right? We're going to